Okay, go for it.
This is John Chandonnet from Vibrant You Academy with Jeff Smith of Vroom Veer, reminding you to live your most vibrant life.
Well done. It's like you've been doing this a while. Good
I
job.
I wrote a book. I wrote a book and recorded it as an audiobook. So you
Yeah,
know,
that's a lot of work.
yeah,
That is
and
a lot of
and
work.
I've been talking a lot about my book. So yeah.
There you go. All right, let me hit stop. I'll be right back.
Yes, sir. Thank you for letting me do that. That was really fun.
Are you ready to thoughtfully steer away from your revved up, frenzied, and far too often scripted life? Then welcome to Vroom Veer with Jeff Smith, where he guides you down the road differently traveled by sharing unique experiences with guests who have managed to shift away from a life stuck on cruise control and veered their way into a more authentic and fulfilling one in all sorts of interesting and kind of remarkable ways. Get ready to Vroom Veer with your differently traveled road chauffeur, Jeff Smith.
Matt Walker, thank you so much for being on Vroom Veer and welcome to the show. How's it going?
It's going well. Yeah. Thanks for having me on.
You're welcome. This is going to be fun. I think this is going to be fun. I think
I'm actually really psyched. The format is so intriguing and different that
Okay.
Let's see where this thing goes.
There you go. Thank my branding guys, not me. I'm not smart. So you are at mattwalkeradventure.com. So talk a little bit about what you're most excited about in your business today.
Yeah, mattwalkeradventure.com. And what I'm most excited about in my business today, I love supporting men through massive life transitions.
You're on the perfect show.
Yeah, I know. As we were talking about, I was like, "Oh, this is what I do," and it's
right.
really and I do it through a unique way. Through using I'm a mountain guide,
right,
and a psychologist, and so I pull those two worlds together. So it's
mountain guide sounds way more fun than psychologist, but yeah,
I know it's way sexier than the psychologist part.
Right.
But,
it helps. The psychologist part helps.
The psychologist part helps, but it's definitely not as intriguing or as interesting.
Not as sexy.
Definitely not. But what I'm most excited about right now is, I look at my calendar and it's a pretty good 50-50 between working with individuals in a traditional sense, in a coaching consulting role. And then the other 50% is out in the field in the mountains, going and doing big things with those same people. So
that's fun. That sounds like a really good life you made for yourself.
Well, it's all in process. So
right. Yeah.
So I'm actually really excited about this coming year and the balance between the two. Some years are a little more heavy on one side than the other, and this year's looking good with a 50-50 split.
That's great.
I'm also really excited. I've got a new book coming out. And I'm wrapping it up right now. So I'm pretty excited to get that out into the world. It's been about 10 years since I published. And,
wow.
And so that's cool. I'm excited about that.
Nice. Sounds like you're staying busy.
I am. I've got 2 kids
wow.
And that keeps me super busy and on my toes as well.
I bet.
Between, 2 young kids, 11 and 14.
There you go. Staying busy, staying healthy. You're an athlete.
Doing my best. Yeah. I mean, I'm middle age, 48, and
good age.
It's fascinating to see how values shift and the way that I choose to spend my time now versus when I was in my 20s. And it's I think it's easy to judge yourself as if you were still from an older position to your younger position. It's easy to judge like, oh, I should still be this way, or to see the FOMO or watching younger generations doing things and wanting that and being like, well, that's actually not what I want.
Right.
And to
you're ahead
allow
of me,
yourself
so
to
that's
have
good.
that, to allow yourself to have those transitions and changes and then not only accept it, but but be
Embrace it.
thrilled and happy about it.
Right.
So,
I hit that wall like a couple years ago, maybe 5 years ago, maybe like when I hit about 50-ish.
yeah.
All of those dreams that I had in high school, like one by one, I became super grateful that I didn't end up doing that.
Oh, wow. Okay. So it wasn't that you had like this bucket list
Like
where you're like, I'm going to go back and tick this stuff off.
I think I went through a phase of like when I was really young, I wanted to be a scientist like you. Right. Okay. That never really went away, but I never wanted to be a professional scientist. I like to consider myself as a lay scientist.
Okay.
Right. Just the way you think. I have a buddy, like my best friend that I met before kindergarten is a chemical engineer. And he told me after he got out of grad school, he's like, no, I understand why you're saying that. It's because you don't know how to think. And he was being very loving. And I gave him this look like, hey, fuck you, you know. But he was right. He was right.
So would you consider yourself like a citizen scientist now?
Citizen scientist. I think it's not like I'm not doing actual science, but I have a scientific, like I don't, like skepticism I take to the nth degree. I don't want to believe anything. Right. Because I think everything that is held too closely is going to fall. Right. That we've seen that so many times. Like, so just don't have beliefs. Have like, okay, this is what the evidence points at now.
So truth with a lowercase t instead of a capital T.
Correct. Right. Yeah. There are very few absolutes. Right.
Right.
Yeah. So
no, I think it's healthy. I mean, as opposed to approaching things with a binary perspective. I mean, that rarely works out, to the betterment or in the positive.
Yeah, I'm never 100% certain. Right.
Yeah.
I'll like my highest will be something in the 90s. Right. You can really trust gravity unless you leave Earth. It'll still function. Yeah. Usually until you get around a black hole or something.
That's right. Fair. Right. No, I find that to be totally, it's interesting. I was reading an acknowledgement section in a memoir just a couple of days ago. And it really struck me because the way it was written was basically the author stating, this is my experience. And the other people, the other characters in this story, the other people here, they have a different version of it.
Totally.
So I'm not sure which one's true, but this is my version of that experience. Yeah. And just the way it was written, I mean, you could have seen it as a little bit of like CYA. They were just like, okay, I'm going to cover my ass in case I'm being liable or lying.
Right.
Or you could see it as like, hey, the human experience is on a spectrum.
Totally.
It's neither, 0 or 1. It's in between. And that was really refreshing to see that perspective and to read that and like, yeah, you know what? We all have our own lens that we see the world through.
Especially when you're recalling things, right?
Oh my gosh.
Unless you have like evidence, like a video or a journal, like your memory is just like, all you're doing is unpacking a file and then recreating it and then adding commentary. That's what a memory is, Yeah.
And then over the years, you're just adding judgment on top of that.
Exactly.
So
yeah.
Like completely.
It's a fiction. It's a fiction.
Yeah.
It's a fiction based on something that happened.
Right. Exactly. So that's, I'm trying to pivot back to like how to think about the Vroom Veer.
Yeah,
sure. Tongue twister.
Of course.
I'm actually just pausing. I'm like, I think I've always had this perspective. I don't know if I veered from it.
Like, what were you like in high school? Were you pretty like academic or scientific?
I was athletic and academic.
That's great.
I studied philosophy and and English lit. And I really wanted to get into politics at a young age. And then, but I think this level of skepticism and uncertainty has been present throughout.
You got lucky.
And I think I had a couple of really good mentors, to be honest. If I look back, like I think there's a couple of people that made a substantial impact in sharing literature and perspective and philosophy with me that made a huge impact.
Teachers are huge. Yeah. Like teacher mentors,
Yeah.
even if it's
Yeah.
just like a little, like I had a handful of teachers, like that's what you're talking about. Not necessarily mentors, just mentioning like, what's in books isn't always true. I'm like, huh?
Right. I remember I had a like girlfriend in high school. Her father was a massive influence for me in terms of, giving me books and handing me, and music and
Wow.
really just kind of opening a completely different perspective than what I had grown up with.
Right.
And,
That's amazing.
And for me, that really actually influenced my career at large in terms of
Right.
looking at, there's a whole variety of ways to show up in the world and professions.
Totally.
And, but as a kid, I didn't have a lot of variety in front of me. I grew up in a suburban environment, at a younger age. And then in high school, I lived in northern New Jersey and more urban environment. And in that environment, like I still wasn't exposed to a lot of variety, in vocation.
Sure.
And so a couple of those, just like a couple of people really open the door to like, there's lots of ways to move through the world. There's lots of ways to professionally, to make money, to support your family, and then also to engage, to be cerebrally engaged and serve in the world. So
yeah.
So high school was, I questioned a lot. And so I grew up in northern New Jersey. I think I was one of just a handful of people that left that area after I graduated. I moved out to Washington State, which was a huge.
That's a huge Veer.
Yeah,
culturally couldn't be more different.
And so I definitely like threw the baby out with the bathwater on that one. I was like, I'm out of here.
Right, good for you. That's a huge Veer. You're getting new software right away. That's good.
Totally. And my motivation was to be in the mountains.
That's great.
Which, wasn't what I grew up in New Jersey, but it was what I was exposed to in high school through an Outward Bound course. And so I was like, I want to go, I want to study, and I want to be in the mountains. And that's what, led me to ditch the East Coast and move out to the Pacific Northwest.
So did you drink the Kool-Aid and get into being weird, the West Coast weird?
Okay. Enough, I think I did. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I get it.
Yeah, it was, but I also still had that nagging, programming in terms of like, how weird can I push this?
Okay.
So
yeah. Because
I'd
your family and most of your friends are still on the other program, right?
Correct.
Right.
Yeah.
I get it. I went through the same thing. It's like you, you adapt to different crowds,
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And but what I did find, I continued on this same process with mentorship is, I fell into a group of climbers,
wow, nice.
out here in Washington State. And at that point, like I climbed before, but I didn't know the culture. I didn't know the norms. I didn't know anything like that. I just brought athleticism and then a willingness to like just try things.
Yeah.
And unbeknownst to me, this group that I had fallen into were going and doing big things. And I just thought that was just what you did.
Lucky,
and so,
again, nice.
Yeah. So I got folded and I said yes a lot.
Right.
I think that was the big differentiator, as I was just willing to, I was like, yeah, I'll go try that.
So climber first before psychologist, it sounds like.
Climber before psychologist. Yeah,
that
for sure.
I can tell. So like, I'll admit something. I actually did a psychology bachelor degree.
Okay.
I got to the end and I realized like the last, I don't know. I think it was like the last, right before I graduated, right? Mm-hmm. They kind of like brought in all the other instructors from the rest of the stuff. And they all made pitches about like, oh, you should go into education. Oh, you should go into this.
Oh, right.
All the different like master's and doctorate programs, right? And they were selling now, right? Because you really can't do anything with a bachelor's
no,
in
it's
psychology.
just a foundation at that point.
Yeah, it's sort of like a sales pitch.
Yeah.
It's
And
like you
so-
get this overview of things you might do. Right. So I just didn't do any of those things because none of them were appealing. So now I have a bachelor's degree in psychology. Can't
Where
do
did you
anything with it.
so you chose, you said no, and you chose what instead?
Just being a retired guy.
You went from undergrad to retired?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, it wasn't quite exactly linear.
Right.
But, so like I already had half of my degree done. So I went to University of Phoenix and I wanted to use my GI Bill.
Okay.
And I didn't want to do business. Right. So psychology seemed interesting. I was like, oh, psychology. Well, I've always been interested in science and I was just curious. Right.
Yeah.
With no commitment I had enough GI Bill to finish the 2 years. So I did. It turned out to be only a year and a half. So I had another year and a half that I could do something else with. But to be honest with you, none of those career choices at the end of the bachelor's seemed anywhere. It was not like something I wanted to do because it was all, I had already been in the Air Force 20 years by then and retired.
Gotcha.
And
so
all of that just seemed like more, not quite a government employee, but basically another government employee.
Right. I mean, it's not that intriguing on its, in that.
Yeah. You're working for a government or you're very much regulated by a government. Right. And I was looking for things that weren't that. Does that make sense?
I hear that.
Yeah.
Totally. Yeah. I
So
actually,
that was why. Yeah.
So I'll fast forward big time on this. So I went from, I graduated with a degree in philosophy.
Wow.
I didn't do anything with that.
Right.
I worked full time as a mountain guide, guiding all over the world.
Nice.
Guiding what's called the Seven Summits, the highest point on each continent, big international expedition guiding.
Wow.
But I reached a point where I saw a gap where my clients were seeking, for lack of, to be direct about it, they were in an existential crisis.
Yeah.
And they were using,
I get it.
They were using climbing and being in the mountains as this salve. And it's
Yes.
like, well, that works for a short period of time, but doesn't have legs to it. It's not sustainable.
It's kind of like going on an ayahuasca trip, but without the ayahuasca.
Yeah, or without the follow through.
Right. Yeah. And also without the set and setting. You don't have a guide.
That's right. No
right.
set and setting.
You're kind of doing recreational psilocybin.
Recreational ayahuasca experience at Club Med.
Yeah.
Like not even in the right place.
Yeah, right.
So so I decided to connect those two worlds together. But before that, I went, got a master's degree in psychology, and I went and practiced for 2 years to get licensure after the program, and kind of ran into similar sort of experiences you're describing, where the efficacy of it was not there because of the parameters that are set in place for engagement with the client. It's these short windows of time, not really able to get into a deeper place, stay there, elicit change, follow through. It was really, really challenging, especially when there's people that have and need. They want to change, but the framework was very difficult to work with. So I basically, did the Veer and was like, I'm going to go and open my own practice in my own way that I know how to, and support those that are they're open to a broader scope of practice, broader way of engaging with these questions.
Right. The parameters of, say, okay, you got just going out in the mountain, right, with no guide other than maybe your Jack Kerouac book or something, right? Right.
That's one way. Yeah.
Right. And then there's also like just the strict, psychology mode, right?
Correct.
But if you add in there some sort of not that, I don't know what yours is, but coaching with like a spiritual kind of bend to it.
There's also the alternative, which is, going to the mountains with a guide who isn't going to offer anything other than the guiding.
Okay. Right.
So
sure.
that yeah, so I was actually witnessing and watching that and seeing all these
Opportunities for
clients,
shifts. Right.
opportunities. I mean, these clients are
Yeah.
hurting. They
Sure.
want that,
Oh yeah.
but there's
I
no
get it.
outlet for it. There's no,
you could
yeah.
compare like that high altitude climbing scenario to say like an ayahuasca or a psilocybin sort of guided thing, because all that's missing there is a guide, because the brain is already open. When you're doing these it's almost the same thing brain wise.
It is very similar.
You're opening up that default mode network to reprogram. All you need there is setting in a guide who knows how to, the right things to set,
Yeah.
And be supportive.
That's exactly right. And I just call them summit experiences.
Totally.
When you have these big, powerful summit experiences, the learning and the takeaway and the application doesn't occur on the summit. No. It occurs on the descent.
Right.
And it's usually that period between exiting the danger zone of the
exactly
itself,
that is the spot. That's the sweet spot.
And then you're in this spot before you transition back into the world, and that's the spot for the real clarity. And it's it's definitely, it's the most powerful aspect of my work to be able to provide that. And I have to say, just like you're describing in this scenario, like, I'm not doing the work. I'm just supporting and guiding.
Right.
That's it. Right. Yeah.
Right.
And
it's not egoic at all. Matt is not involved. you're just there
literally
as a
guiding.
Yeah. Support and guide. Right.
Yeah.
And like when I saw that state on TV, the first time I saw that Bear Grylls show where he takes like celebrities like Deion Sanders out and makes them think they're going to die on a rope.
Yeah.
And then as soon as they get off that rope, they're freaking euphoric, right? Totally. And you know it because you've seen it a million times, right? But the first time I saw it, I was like, oh, there's a state I haven't seen.
Yeah. And then
it's so authentic, it's just,
and that's the gap that I really focus on is that moment between is that transition point,
right?
To applying it, so it doesn't become like this addictive state that you have to go outside of yourself to get to over and over again. But it becomes integrated.
That's amazing.
And the clarity, man, people like talk about Vroom Vroom Veer. It's like the clarity that people walk away from. They may not dramatically shift their life in terms of like what their job is or some massive transition, but the clarity in how they show up, that's so tangible. And
it's a course correction is really what it is. To be a little woo without going full woo woo, it's a step towards awakening, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I like to look at it as like it's awakening with a lowercase a, as we were talking about.
There you go. Right.
Because the awakening is it's the individual's choice. It doesn't have a defined version. Right. There isn't a specific way that it has to show up.
Yeah.
It's their own. Yeah.
It's like a progress bar. Like if we were in a game and, we all had stat bars and one of them said awareness, it would go up one bar.
Yeah.
And everybody has a bar and they're,
And for me, the magic is when the individual is able to really decipher where their values and their actions are out of alignment, and then how to correct it so that their actions are now in alignment with their values.
Yeah.
And that is like, that's where just like people just come out of these like so motivated and energized.
Right. I just went through an unintentional veer and it's still rippling into my life.
Oh, I thought you meant just like right now.
No. Well, recently, not right now. That would have been cool, but no, sorry.
That would have been cool. Yeah.
No,
okay, what was it?
So I heard Tim Ferriss and his buddy Kevin Rose talking about the Way app. And the Way app is this, it's just like another meditation app, but the guy behind it is an actual Zen master, right? He's from England, but he actually went to Japan and became a, no kidding, legit Zen master.
Okay.
So you can feel the difference between like meditation that's not going to get you very far, but maybe chill you out, and an actual really thought out ancient school of thought.
Right.
So
it's fast food versus the real deal.
Yeah, completely different. Like you are sitting for 10 minutes, right? But this has been planned out. And you actually, every time you sit, that awareness bar, that awareness, progress meter just goes, not a whole bar, but just a tiny little bit, a different color, like every day, and now I think I'm on like month number 2, right?
Okay.
And it's huge. Like, okay. So then I was like, I heard Robert Rodriguez talk about how he was like, I want to play guitar and I want to walk 10,000 steps every day. How do I do that? Right. And he was like, oh, I just have to tell myself I'm an athlete. And he said, I'm an athlete. What does an athlete do? Oh, an athlete goes for a walk. Well, how can I walk? It's so boring. And he's like, oh, wait, I know how. If I just walk around the house and play guitar, I can probably walk longer. Right. So now
combining the two together.
Yeah. Huh. So for me, I decided I'm going to take a walk, listen to a podcast. And now that I walk listening to a podcast with earbuds, it's like I could keep walking for hours. Right.
Right.
It's
versus
like, without it's fun, but it's not like that. That podcast gives you like, I didn't want to do that because I like being out in nature and I like being aware of nature. But to be honest with you, I do that all the time. Right? I don't need another hour of it. If I can make my steps easier to get with a podcast that lasts over an hour, that's a hack.
So what's the Veer? The Veer
is just now I'm like, okay. So like, instead of like, so I'm like now back on the 30 and 30 diet, right?
Okay.
Right.
Right.
I'm getting up early and drinking
so that
protein
unlocked.
Shake. I think it was the Zen thing got me to the exercise thing, got me to the, and they just climb incrementally. It's like protein in the morning, cold showers again. I had done all this again, like a gajillion years ago, right? When 4-Hour Body first came out, but then you just go back to sleep.
Right.
Like,
then you become comfortable again.
Right. You start vrooming again.
Soft.
Yeah. You start vrooming again. And then you wake up again. Yeah.
Right.
So that's how life goes.
And it's nice to, I'm not hearing in your story, but it's nice to have that happen without
a crisis,
a massive tragedy or trauma associated with it.
Just ease right into it,
Right.
Yeah. It was great.
Yeah, not thrown into it.
Right. So let's talk a little bit about some of the fun stuff you get to do because wow. So you've been to the top 7 summits.
Yeah, so I haven't summited Everest.
Okay.
That's the only one I've climbed on Everest, but I haven't summited it yet. That's
I'm one of these people that like if I ever went anywhere, I would stop at base camp. Like
well, you might get a little itch to go a little further.
Maybe.
But there's 14 8,000 meter peaks, Everest being the highest of those 14.
Okay.
So when you think about big Himalayan mountains like that, there's really, there's a lot of them. There's more than 14 that are big and massive that way. They're also in the 7,000 meter range, but there's 14 8,000 meter peaks.
Right.
And so I've had the opportunity and success to climb 2 of the 14.
Okay.
But I have not summited Everest yet. But
yet, so you will.
Yeah,
probably.
Right now it's just I was actually going to go last year. I was going to go this year, and my father's ill, and challenges have come up, and so it's kind of gotten pushed to the.
It's not like going to Burning Man. It takes a lot of work.
It takes a ton of work and a lot of time and a lot of
money.
Resources.
Yeah.
There's a lot involved in that. So, so some just shifting priorities based on current circumstance.
Okay.
Versus like just, putting your head down and I could have gone, but it would have this year, but my head wouldn't have been in the right space.
Right. Yeah. Right. Within the balance kind of idea, it's got to be right. The timing has to be right. Right. And then you could get there and only get the base camp and then weather and everything else could just.
Absolutely.
Right. And you've already spent the money.
And you're not getting any of it back.
Right.
But this year, I do have 2 of the 7 summits on my client calendar this year.
Oh, that's great.
Parsons Pyramid, which is the one in Indonesia,
Wow.
in October, and then in December, Kilimanjaro, and that'll be my 15th, I think, Kilimanjaro expedition. We've got a group of 8 guys going, with a couple up to 12, but that's a men's group, men's team that's going,
Right.
and it's a combined expedition for climbing Kilimanjaro and doing men's work at the same time. And I really look at it as like this. We talk about the learning that takes place on these expeditions. Kili, while not not a technical rope climb,
Right.
is one of the most powerful expeditions I've taken clients on,
So
because
it's a little bit like not as difficult, not as technical.
it's not as technical. It
Okay.
allows, that's correct. It's not as difficult. It's not as technical. The summit day on Kili is as hard as any summit day anywhere. It's still
Okay.
hard.
Right.
But because of the nature of the climb, it gives a lot of time, to like kind of reset your nervous system. You have slow mornings,
Right.
drink a cup of coffee, watch the sunrise,
Right.
pack your bags. It's no big rush. Same thing in the evenings, arrive at camp, take your time. And it allows for camaraderie and,
Right.
and reflection. And
Right. Well, that's nice.
what I found, even the most impactful aspect of these trips right now is the digital detox.
Totally.
I wouldn't have seen that coming, but now that I'm in it and running them this way, it's like, oh, this is such a huge gift,
Right.
to not be tethered to your phone.
Right.
And it's hard for people. It's really hard.
It is. Yeah.
The first couple of days feel itchy.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and then there's this sense of relief of not having to
Right.
respond and be be reactive.
Right.
And then I warn everyone, but as soon as we get back into cell range at the end of the expedition, those things go off, and you're tethered right back to it.
Right.
Which one point is like, hey, it's good to connect with your family, your friends, let them know that you're safe, how things went.
Right.
But then
you might want to control the dosage a little bit.
Yeah, and that is probably what I hear the most of.
Right.
Before we fly home, is like, oh shit, I don't want this level of input.
Mirror. I don't want my Black Mirror going off.
I don't want my Black Mirror episode. Yeah, I don't want to be living the Black Mirror episode. And
if you look at your phone, it literally looks like a Black Mirror.
It does. I know. Look at that.
So we all have a Black Mirror in our pocket.
So this is like an unintended consequence of my work. Is I've become more and more involved in supporting digital detox.
That's great.
I didn't see that coming.
Yeah. It makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, to the point where I actually acquired
without going to a mountain. Like I have like uninstalled all of my social apps. There are no social apps on my phone. So if I want to go to any social thing, which I kind of don't, but if I have to, I have to go on a browser, and it's annoying.
You got to make the effort.
Yeah. And that helps. Yeah. Not having,
and I'd say,
I actually turn off most notifications. Like if it's not about something I actually need to know, I don't want that notification.
It's not as addictive when it's in a browser. That's for sure.
Totally. And you can turn off notifications for any app.
Yeah. So I will, this unintended consequence, I actually just acquired a company in the past couple of months that is focused on analog productivity.
I love
for this very reason.
Yeah. Okay.
To be able to support and, walk the talk, which is, how can we be in relationship with the digital and not have it, devour us, eat us alive.
Right.
And so, while still operating and high functionality in the world. So
good for you.
Yeah. So I acquired this company, and it's awesome. Analog. It's called 3x5 Life, and
Free Wi-Fi Life.
3x5.
Oh, 3x5.
Yeah.
I'm glad I asked.
Yeah. 3x5 Life.
Oh, okay. So you have like a 3x5 card or something.
Like 3x5 index cards. Yeah.
Nice.
The printed 3x5 index cards.
Okay.
For productivity, gratitude, maintaining your schedule.
Love it.
Gratitude in the morning, wins in the afternoon. It's like, trying to really detether ourselves from the digital.
Yes.
And so I'm pretty excited about bringing that to life.
That's awesome. That's amazing.
Yeah.
So have you ever almost died on the mountain? Just for a fun story.
Yeah. I mean, I would say
Not fun, but exciting.
I mean, the answer is
sexy.
yes.
Okay.
The answer is yes. The short answer is yes. Had a couple of significant injuries.
Okay.
I've been climbing now since I was 16, 48. Wow. So
right.
It's a lot of time out there. And
right.
I mean, that's one of the realities is
it's going to happen. If you climb
the more
enough,
time,
it's going to happen.
Yeah, your exposure is going to increase.
Right.
So exposure to risk increases. I think one of the things with climbing that is it has the appearance of constant high risk.
Okay.
And the reality is that it actually is pretty low risk.
Okay. Good. Yeah. That's good to know.
I mean, the most dangerous
aspect. You never hear about that when you watch a documentary. It seems like it's
exactly
high risk.
It doesn't make for good TV.
Right.
And
exactly.
in fact, climbing doesn't make for good TV. So when you see climbing movies,
it's kind of,
or
they have to
on
make
TV,
them like,
it's not even remotely realistic.
Right.
Yeah. Not at all.
Because you're not going out of your way to doing stupid stuff. Because you're going to die.
You're going to die. You're going to die. You're going to get hurt.
Right.
And if you are, you're not going to be around for very long. So the axiom is there's old climbers and bold climbers, but there are no old, bold climbers.
That makes sense.
At some point, you push the envelope to a point where you're like, okay, that's an edge I'm not willing to go back to again.
Yeah, I get it.
And
I mean, shit happens, like unprecedented shit happens. Like I just watched a documentary about this earthquake in Everest, and
right,
that doesn't happen all that often.
No, those are acts of God.
Right.
That's right.
Right.
Yeah, and that's anywhere and everywhere.
It's gonna ruin everybody's day. I mean,
right.
Even the locals, right? Like it. Yeah, I mean,
especially the locals.
Especially the locals. Yes.
Yeah. There's always acts of God. There's always risk. But it's about managing risk, and then it's also around what is real and what is perceived risk. What's real risk and what's perceived risk. And climbing has a high level perceived risk,
right?
But the actual real risk is low. I mean, it's definitely more dangerous to drive to the climbing location and the trailhead than it is the actual climb itself. Being on the interstate is pretty damn dangerous.
Is very dangerous.
Right? It's funny.
Why, I moved out of LA.
We become numb to it, but you're like, wow, we are all agreeing to these rules.
Right. And
we're going to drive really fast.
Yeah. If they
in a very small space.
Nobody ever even thinks about that. But yeah, you're right. I mean, going to work is very dangerous. If you commute more than, 20 minutes, especially if you're on a freeway. Like, oh my God. Like I was living in LA area for like 15 plus years. And I got in first I got in an accident like on the 101, and I probably should have died. And I didn't even get hurt. Right.
Wow.
Yeah.
Right.
Some guy rear-ended me because he was on his phone. Rear-ended me at like full speed. I don't even think he hit his brakes. Right.
Amazing.
Yeah. And I just my car was totaled and I was fine. Okay. And I was like, okay, I guess I'm okay. Right. And then flash forward, not even a small number of years later, I got sideswiped very close to my house on the 110 and by one of these, like a semi truck. Right.
Uh-huh.
Now I didn't total my car, but Jesus.
Yeah. Right.
And that was at speed. He just, how things, that drift. And usually he was behind in my blind spot and then, blah,
I mean,
that's why I moved.
It's a risk that we are willing to engage in.
Crazy.
Right.
Yeah. It's crazy. Somehow we're numb.
So I think it's important to note that, especially come back to the Veer aspect is, the perception versus the actuality of risk. And I think oftentimes our perceptions are so so off compared to the
Right.
reality of the risk.
Right.
So look at the driving thing. We don't consider, our perception is that it's low when it's actually high.
Totally high.
But, career shift, career change, we have perception that it's
high,
a high risk.
Right.
But it may not be high risk at all. It's just that we don't have the capacity by ourselves.
Right.
Without facilitation, without dialogue, without trust and support of an objective perspective to be able to see like what is the actual risk and what is the perceived risk. So I think it's a good thing to continually visit is like, what is perceived risk? What is actual risk? And what am I responding to? My anxiety, my depression, whatever it is that I have, am I responding to something perceived or something real?
Right. Wow. See, look at that. The psychologist showed up.
Look at that.
But I agree. I totally agree. Especially like I think growing up, like I went from high school to the Air Force and, so like I had this perception that when I got out of the Air Force, whether I retired or just got out, right, that I would probably have to go home. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know why I thought that, but it's almost like growing up in a very small town, Midwest, has like this gravitational pull. Like I had this belief or perception or whatever you want to call it that like maybe I'm not good enough for the world, but the Air Force sort of protects me. Like I'm good at the Air Force, right? But then I realized at some point that like being good at the Air Force is, not everybody in the Air Force is good at being in the Air Force. And I was, right?
Yeah.
And I had that realization. I was like, maybe I might be able to get a job and be pretty good.
Maybe my world will expand from this.
Yeah.
Versus,
yeah.
Instead of seeing it as like this thing you go and do, and then you return back to the old self.
Exactly. I think people that do like one hitch, and then just go home, they're doing a disservice because I was about to do that. And then one of those spiritual teachers that just shows up out of the blue and changes your life forever shows up, says a couple of words and leaves. So there was this, like I was planning to get out of the Air Force when I was like very young and in debt. And then I was at a bar and this Army captain that I did not know, we just started chatting over our beers. And I said, I'm going to get out. I'm going to go use the GI Bill. I'm going to go to college. And he's like, how's your debt? I'm like, oh yeah, I have credit card debt. He's like, how are you going to pay for school? I don't know. What do? Get loans? And he says, you shouldn't get out. You should stay in, you should pay off your debt. And then once you do that, then maybe go out and go to college. But you're a dickweed. You have no idea what the world is like. And I'm like, oh, shut up. And I go away. Right. But then that sort of sunk in over time. And I'm like, he's kind of right. Right.
And then you made that choice to stick.
I stayed in. Yeah. I didn't commit to 20 at that point. Right. But it turned that extra hitch turned into 20, I kept doing it,
I remember, see if this is, I think there's a similarity here. I remember being early in my career and trying to raise money for a private expedition I was going on, personal trip. And I think it would have cost me like, $3,500 or something to go and do this trip.
Okay.
Which at that time,
that's a lot of money.
It was absurd amount of money. I didn't
it's all relative, but yes.
It's all relative. And it's all relative. And I remember saying something to the effect of like, well, if I made more money, and this guy who, was a 7-figure earner, basically just dressed me down and said, you know what, man, it doesn't matter how much money you make, it's how you manage your money.
Exactly.
He's like, you can make 7 figures, but if you blow it all and you're not managing it well, then you're in the exact same position you're in, which is cash poor. So figure out, and I remember just being like, because I had this idea like, oh, there's something else. It'll get solved in a different way somewhere else somehow.
Right.
And it's similar sort of reflection of like, actually, you got to manage right here, right now.
That is a huge thing to learn,
Yeah.
That was another teacher that just showed up for me. Like that's a fun story. We've got about 2 minutes.
And that was just a
10.
one-off. Like you never saw him again?
I never saw that captain again. But this other story is more fun. So, and it's about money, so it relates to your story. So I met this other guy, same rank as me, you know, and I just went down to his office for like I need to get this signed for my boss. Right. So I got to sit there and wait for his boss to sign it. He says, don't leave. He'll probably sign it right away. Right. So we have like 5 minutes to chat. Right. He says, so how you doing on your investing? And I'm like, weird question, but okay. I'm maxing out my IRA. And he's like, good. What else? And I'm like, that's it. Is your wife maxing out her IRA? I'm like, no, she can do that. You know, like 5 minutes on a sticky. He's like, do this, do that, do this, do this. Motleyfool.com.
Yeah.
Go read that. Do it all. You'll thank me later.
Right. It's amazing, right?
Right.
I like to think about that, actually, the similarity there. This may sound a little bit like a non sequitur, but
that's okay.
You know, each time I'm in a checkout line at a grocery store and I interact with the cashier.
Good for you.
Each time that occurs, I interact with them. I'm acutely aware that they are having their own experience in the world.
Right. Okay.
Right.
Yes.
It's easy for us to kind of glaze over and just feel like, oh, this is a automaton who's in service to me to check out. Right. And that in each of these interactions.
Now. Yeah, but yes.
Yeah, true. Yeah. Each of these interactions we have, I mean, like you're talking about a 5-minute interaction that shifted your approach and shifted your life.
Total Veer.
And that we have that capacity in all of these interactions if we stay open. Because you could have said, you could have just been like, well, you could have just closed down and not even had the conversation.
Right.
You could have blown it off and like not even had the but you went there with them. Now, and what it just reminds me of, like, there are opportunities constantly in front of us.
Yeah.
And we have a choice as to whether we want to be open and engage, or if we want to move through the world closed and shut down. And so it's just a good reminder that story, your story is a good reminder that both stories are strangers.
Yeah.
That were willing to have open conversation, and then it shifted your experience.
See, the military, I think that happens more often than not, because the military, when it doesn't matter that I didn't know that captain, I didn't know that staff sergeant, right? They just look at me and they go, that guy is like my little brother, right? Mm-hmm. If I have a moment to mentor this idiot, you know, and so that's not always true, right? Like he could have said, I could have been killing it. Yeah, exactly. Right. It's like this automatic built in, like, you know, you're in the Army. So, you know, there's this little rivalry that gets overblown more than people think, right? Like usually when you're just hanging out in a bar, you don't have time to get to the rivalry stuff. You're just buddies. Right. Yeah.
Yeah. Just another human. Yeah. Human in the same.
So the funny part of that story was I was in Saudi Arabia for 59 days in 2002. So right before like the 2003 war broke out, I was there for Desert Shield before it became the Storm. And so I'm getting ready to leave, and I get on this bus on PSAB, Prince Sultan Air Base, Saudi Arabia. And there's the guy. And we're both now tech sergeants. And he's like, hey, man.
Which guy?
The guy from The Office years ago.
No kidding.
No kidding. I had never seen him again. Yeah. And he's like, how are your investments? I'm like, thank you so much.
That's really funny. Wow.
It was amazing. Yes.
Amazing. I mean, yeah.
What are
unlikely location, an amazing bookend to that story.
Yes. Yeah. Anyway, so you are Matt Walker. You are mattwalkeradventure.com. And then you said you had a promo code. So talk about this. What do we get?
Yeah, well, I was just going to invite the listeners to check out 3x5life, 3x5life.com.
Okay.
And that's that analog productivity system that I was describing.
Fun. Yeah.
And we'll take 20% off. So if you do VVV 20%, if you do VVV20 as the code at checkout, you'll grab 20% off.
Okay. I'm going to write down VVV20.
Yeah, VVV20, and that's 3x5life.com, the number 3x5life.com. life.com.
Okay.
And we'll give listeners a chance to check that system out. I think it's super helpful in following like kind of the line that we were talking about is like, how do we want to engage with the world? Do we want digital distraction and the digital noise to be our overlord, or do we want to work with it? So
there you go. Watch the Black Mirror on Netflix. Don't carry it in your pocket.
Good. Damn good advice.
Get the 3x5 cards. So I will link to all of those in the show notes. That was easy peasy. So if you want to click on 3x5life.com/VVV20, it's easy. Go to the show notes. VVV.com/Matt-Walker. There you go. See, you did your promo. I did mine. It's a circular veracity, man.
Thanks for your time. I really appreciate the dialogue. It was fun.
This was fun. Okay, I will let you go. You got a hard stop. You have a good one.
All right. Take care, man. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for taking the time to ride along with us on another episode of Vroom Vroom Veer. For podcast info and show notes, be sure to head over to vvveer.com. That's VVER.com. Man, that's fun to say. And we'll catch up with you next time here on Vroom Vroom Veer.